The sky is the only place quiet enough to forget I used to be someone else. Jack Callahan wasn't flying to go anywhere. He flew to forget. The Cessna 185 groaned through the thin November air, floats skimming shadows over the dark waters of Moosehead Lake. Wind whipped across the wings, pressing the metal skin like a breath held too long. Inside the cockpit, Jack gripped the yoke with a quiet steadiness, eyes forward, jaw locked. The headset muffled the roar of the old Lycoming engine, but the hum was more than just noise, it was armor. Above 3,000 feet, nothing could touch him. No phones, no ghosts, no people, just sky and throttle. Maverick shifted in the co-pilot seat beside him, a thick-bodied German shepherd with gray in his fur and knowing in his eyes. Normally he slept through these flights. Jack glanced sideways. Today Maverick was wide awake, tail rigid, head up, ears forward. Mav Jack muttered, tapping the dog's flank. "What are you seeing?" The dog let out a low, uneasy whine, pressed his nose to the side window, then growled deep guttural warning. Jack followed the dog's gaze and frowned. Nothing but water, trees, and stone. Except, there below a crescent island he'd passed dozens of times. Uninhabited. Cold. Not worth landing on. Yet something looked off this time. He banked the plane lower against his better judgment. A thin curl of wind rocked the wings. Maverick's growl deepened. Then Jack saw it. Across the sandy curve of the shore, 3 massive letters had been laid out in driftwood, and stone faded uneven but unmistakable. SOS. He pulled back on the yoke, hard instinct kicking in. The Cessna climbed rapidly. Maverick barked, not frantic, demanding. "Son of a bitch," Jack said through his teeth. He stared at the letters as they shrank beneath them. It wasn't a trick of shadows, wasn't erosion. That was human, deliberate, desperate. Jack's fingers tightened on the yoke. His breath stayed shallow, suspended in indecision. He could fly on. 20 minutes more and he'd be home. Back to the cabin. The quiet. The nothingness he needed. Someone else's problem. He wasn't a rescuer anymore. Wasn't anyone's hero. Not since Adrian. But Maverick was still locked onto the island like a missile. His body trembled slightly. The dog knew. Jack let the plane level coast over the far side of the island. The landscape yawned into cold gray water and jagged trees. Something crawled up from his ribs into his throat. Guilt, no recognition. "The sky is the only place quiet enough to forget I used to be someone else," he whispered. Maverick's ears flicked back, catching the sound as if reminding him forgetting is temporary. Jack hit the comm switch on instinct. November 5185 Kilo reporting unknown SOS on island east of Spencer Bay. Possible emergency. Descending to investigate. Static. He checked the frequency. Switched. Tried again. Nothing. The realization sat like a stone in his gut, signal dead. He looked at Maverick. The dog didn't need a command. He already knew. Jack circled once, lowering the flaps. Wind gusted, but didn't fight. The island was yielding. Silent. Still. He dropped toward the shoreline. The floats slapped the water, sending twin sprays up each side of the cockpit. The engine quieted to a heavy idle as he taxied toward the sand. He cut the engine. Silence rushed in. It wasn't peaceful. It was thick. Too still. The kind of quiet that rings in your ears. The kind that waits. Jack sat for a moment, gripping the controls like they might vanish. Then he unbuckled and pulled on his worn leather jacket, the one that still smelled like gun oil and sea salt. He reached behind the seat and unclipped the holster at his belt. Sig Sauer P226. Loaded. Just in case. He slid open the door. The cold hit him first, sharp, wet, biting. Then the scent pine rot, something older beneath it. Maverick leapt from the float to the sand landing with predatory grace. He didn't bark, just moved low, slow, already tracking. Jack tied the plane to a half-buried log, knotted it tight like he wasn't sure he'd be back soon. The SOS letters loomed bigger up close. Each one was 6 feet tall, layered in a kind of urgency only terror can arrange. Heavy stones, massive logs. Whoever made it had worked hard, and they weren't signaling for fun. He scanned the beach. Nothing moved. No gulls. No footprints. Maverick headed inland without waiting, toward the tree line, toward the dark. Jack followed. They passed into pine cover needles crunching underfoot. The temperature dropped sharply. Jack's breath ghosted in front of him. Maverick slowed, nose, low tail, steady, then stopped. Ahead between the trees, something man-made. A campsite, torn tent, gear scattered, fire pit cold and flooded. And there, beneath a flapping yellow poncho, a journal, leather, water damaged. He crouched careful, flipped open the strap. This journal belongs to Lauren Whitaker. The name hit him like a whisper from another life. Not for the identity, but the intimacy of it. A voice in the middle of nowhere. A woman. Writing because there was no one left to speak to. The entries were short. First calm, then urgent. Lauren and her husband Ben had shipwrecked in a storm. Survived. Then 2 men arrived. They said they'd help the journal read. They lied. The last line was blurred but still legible. They said they'd be back. Jack closed the book slowly. His fingers were cold, but his spine was colder. Maverick tensed, staring into the woods. Jack stood, every nerve in his body going still. A crack of twig, a rustle in the brush, not an animal. He drew his weapon voice low. Mav, stay close. The wind died completely. Only the forest breathed now, and something out there was listening. Jack kept his stance low. As he moved between the trees, Maverick a silent shadow at his side. The pine forest swallowed sound branches, creaking in the light wind like bones shifting in their sockets. Every few steps, Maverick would pause, sniff, and adjust his path, like he wasn't just tracking scent, but memory. Jack's pulse hadn't settled since he read that last line in the journal. They said they'd be back. That meant someone had been here recently. That meant someone might still be. They emerged into a small clearing. Flattened grass, broken branches, an old cookpot rusted through. Jack knelt beside it. Ashes. Long cold. But the arrangement logs pulled in damp canvas folded in a pile felt rushed. A hasty exit, like someone ran before they had time to pack. He turned the journal over in his hand again. Lauren's handwriting, steady at first, devolved into trembling scrawls. Day 3, Ben is hurt, feverish. Day 5. They said they saw the smoke. I thought it was help. Day 6. They brought whiskey and smiles. Then they took the radio. Day 8, Ben said he didn't trust them. They heard him. Jack clenched his jaw. This wasn't a castaway story, it was something more vicious. Maverick suddenly veered left, barking once a sharp cutting sound that echoed across the trees. Jack bolted after him, brushing branches aside until he stumbled into another smaller clearing, this one barely touched by light. Maverick stood over something. A shoe. Woman's size. Half buried in moss. Jack picked it up. It was dry. Hadn't been here long. The brand was modern, relatively new. Near it, broken twigs, a trail of disturbed ground leading toward a rocky slope. He followed the track boots, crunching softer now, rifle slung back over his shoulder, hand close to his sidearm. Maverick stayed just ahead, but close. The trail dipped down to a shallow ravine where a patch of wildflowers had been crushed flat. There, Jack found something else. A torn page from the journal, different ink, same handwriting. If someone finds this, don't trust the one who says he's Ben. He turned the page over. Nothing else. That message alone was enough to twist his stomach. Someone screamed with rocks and driftwood, and no one's listening. The line whispered through his mind like wind through pines. That SOS hadn't just been a call. It had been a cry of frustration. No one came. No one heard. Until now. And now maybe it was too late. He pocketed the torn paper and looked at Maverick. "She's alive," he said aloud. Not to convince the dog, but to commit to the thought. Lauren was alive. And if she was still running, still hiding, then whoever took her didn't have total control. The ground changed underfoot. Pine needles gave way to slick moss and shale. Jack paused, running a hand along the nearby rock wall. He spotted old claw marks, no, not animal. Someone trying to climb and slipping. A long smear of dirt dragged downward. Jack dropped to one knee and traced it. "Lauren," he said under his breath. Maverick barked again, short-clipped, then growled. Jack shot to his feet, weapon drawn. Movement. Not far. Branches snapping. Something heavy. He ducked behind a fallen log. Maverick crouched beside him. The growling stopped, replaced by a low, throaty rumble in the dog's chest. A figure emerged from the woods, stumbling. Male. Early 40s. Beard, dirt-smeared face pants torn at the knee. He clutched his ribs like they hurt, limping slightly. Jack raised the pistol. "Stop! Hands up!" The man froze, arms half-lifted, face contorted with exhaustion or fear. "Don't shoot," he rasped. "It's me. Ben." Jack didn't lower the gun. Maverick snarled, teeth bared. The man took a cautious step forward. "You got my wife's message. Please tell me she's okay." Jack said nothing. The man's eyes darted between the gun and the dog. "They tried to kill me," he continued. "They took her. I couldn't stop them. I've been hiding ever since." Jack studied his face. Something didn't click. The voice had a strange cadence. The wound on his ribs looked bandaged, carefully, too clean for someone who'd been stumbling through the woods. Maverick didn't budge. His tail was rigid, hackles high. "Where were you when the fire started?" Jack asked, testing. She mentioned smoke. The man blinked. "What?" "Back near the east inlet. She had tried lighting it to signal for help." Wrong answer. Jack knew the fire had been in the western ridge according to the journal's earlier entries. "You're not Ben," he said coldly. The man's expression shifted for a fraction of a second. Fear into calculation, then back into fear. "I didn't lie to hurt anyone," the man snapped. "I was scared, all right. My name's Troy. I met them after the wreck. I tried to help. But those other guys, Sawyer and Mitch, they took control. They locked her up. I got away." Jack still didn't lower the gun. "Then why say you're Ben? Because I didn't think you'd help me if I told the truth." Maverick barked, suddenly lunging forward before Jack held him back. The dog's snarl said more than Jack needed. He holstered the pistol slowly, but kept his eyes on Troy. "You're staying with me," Jack said, "until I know who the hell you really are. I told you Jack cut him off. Save it." He motioned for Troy to walk ahead of him. Maverick followed tight on his heels. Back at the beach camp, Jack forced Troy to sit near the fire ring. He gave him water. Checked the bandage, it had clean gauze medical tape. Not something a shipwrecked man would have in hand this long. Troy started talking again, weaving a story. Jack barely listened. His eyes drifted to the edges of the trees. He knew Lauren was out there. He knew Troy had reasons to lie. And he knew something else now. This wasn't just a rescue. This was a trap someone else had already tried to escape, and maybe failed. Jack reached into his coat and pulled the torn journal page again. Reread it. "Don't trust the one who says he's Ben." That warning had come just in time, and there was no telling how many more weren't coming at all. As night fell and Troy's voice blurred into background noise, Jack turned to Maverick and whispered, "Tomorrow we go find her. We follow what's left of her trail." The dog's ears twitched. He understood. They weren't done. Not even close. Jack didn't sleep. The fire snapped in low orange breaths, coughing embers into the dark, but he never let it die. He sat with his back to the driftwood logs, knees bent, elbows on them, watching Troy on the opposite side. Troy slept too easily, too safely, like a man who knew worse things were still out there. Maverick lay between them, eyes half closed, resting but alert. That dog never fully slept unless Jack did too. Tonight neither of them would. Before dawn, the first pale light bled into the sky. Jack stood stretching stiff shoulders. Troy stirred awake, blinking heavily, as if he expected breakfast instead of suspicion. Jack didn't speak. He just said, "Get up." Troy hesitated. "Why, where are we going?" "We're not, I am." Something flickered behind Troy's eyes. The brief fear of being left alone or being found alone. "You can't just—" Jack cut him off with a look. "Stay here. Don't touch my gear. Don't try to leave." Then he nodded once to Maverick. "Guard." Maverick silently got up, walked over to Troy and sat. Not relaxed. Watching. Jack slung his rifle and headed back toward the tree line. His last glance showed Troy frozen in place, staring at Maverick like he'd rather have been tied to a tree than guarded by that dog. The forest swallowed him again. The ground was damp from dew cold, covered in layers of pine needles, moss, and long-forgotten fallen branches. Maverick wasn't with him, but he still felt the dog's instincts in his own legs, the way to move, how to step, how to listen. Lauren was out there. Alone, hunted, or hiding, maybe both. He found the mossy ravine from yesterday, followed his own footprints, until they split from the trail of crushed grass and broken stems he'd tracked before. He crouched near a rotted stump, studying the faint indentations. He could picture it, someone had knelt here, not for cover, for rest. Then fled. He stood checking the wind direction and moved uphill. A soft breeze stirred, carrying a faint trace. Smoke. Not fresh campfire, but old wet smoke soaked into wood and earth. He followed it instinctively, his senses tightening, just like when he used to sweep ruined villages overseas. Same silence, same tension, same smell of something left behind. He reached a slope of sharp granite and thick roots gripping through the stone like fingers. A narrow split ran between the rocks. From a few feet away, it looked like nothing more than shadows. Up close, you could see the scraped rock, the moss crushed into the cracks, the small flecks of something else. Fabric. A sleeve, maybe. He knelt and pressed his hand against the earth. Cold, damp, still soft enough to take an imprint. Something had come through here. He pushed through. The rock opening led to a hollowed section of forest behind it, a kind of natural bowl of stone and brush. You wouldn't see it unless you were practically on top of it. No straight line of sight, no easy access, perfect for someone hiding or waiting. He scanned slowly. Leaves kicked up in spots, footprints. A lock of blonde hair tangled in thorn, and a scrap of paper pushed halfway under a rock. He lifted it carefully. The writing was smudged, but readable. He isn't alone. Jack's jaw flexed. That wasn't new information, but it was confirmation. Sawyer, Mitch, Troy, maybe more. He tucked the paper away and stood, thumb smoothing absently over the cold metal of his rifle trigger guard. He felt the old version of himself resurfacing, the one he tried to leave behind, the one who could follow invisible trails, who could read ground like language. He followed the tracks farther into the woods. The trees thickened, cutting sunlight into strips across wet earth. The smell of wet leaves and iron mingled in the air. Then he heard it. Not an animal. Not branches in wind. Heavy. Human. Jack froze, weight perfectly balanced, breath controlled. Footsteps. He stepped behind an old pine, low and still. The footsteps grew clearer, a figure moving unsteadily, slow, not hunting, not confident, someone tired, possibly hurt. Jack shifted silently to the other side of the tree. The figure stumbled through the brush. Male, mid-30s. Dirty clothes, pants torn at the thighs, one arm wrapped in fabric that once looked like the sleeve of a jacket. Not Troy. This one was bigger, rougher, more ragged. He stopped and leaned against a tree, breathing deep. Sawyer. It had to be. Lauren had described him in her journal as the large one, the one who doesn't speak much. Jack stayed hidden. Sawyer pulled something from his pocket. An earpiece, turned it in his fingers, tried to speak. Static. He smacked it against his palm, frustrated, angry. "Damn this island," he muttered. Jack listened, motionless. Sawyer kept moving, past Jack, back down through the brush, heading south, away from where Jack believed Ben might be, which meant Lauren didn't know where her husband was, or Sawyer didn't want others to know. Jack let him go, not because he was merciful, but because Sawyer was going somewhere. Somewhere Jack needed to know. He waited until the man's footsteps faded, then followed. Silent. No rush. Perfect distance. Sawyer's path wound through thick brush, twice crossing shallow streams, until the trees eventually thinned. That's when Jack saw it, hidden by natural pine cover nestled near the western shoreline. A boat. Not a wreck. Hidden. Tethered low. Engine intact. Fuel cans, supplies, and tarp-covered crates. Crates that looked like they didn't belong to shipwreck survivors. Jack stayed back, eyes narrowed. Sawyer limped up to it, checked something under the tarp, sat on a crate rubbing his injured arm. A staging point. That wasn't rescue. That was preparation. Jack's pulse quickened. Everything connected now. Sawyer. Troy. Mitch. These weren't stranded men. They were waiting for pickup, or protecting cargo. He took a long breath. Cold air filled his lungs with clarity. He was no longer stumbling into someone else's mess. He was inside it. And now he needed to decide, expose it or stop it. He turned back without disturbing anything. He didn't have Maverick, but he could already hear the dog's instinct echoing in his head. Get proof, find the girl, then take it all down. By the time he saw the flickering glow of the campfire again, Maverick was on his feet, alert body tense. The dog had picked up something. Jack walked in weapon loose at his side, eyes never leaving Troy. Troy, who already knew something had changed. Jack sat calm, confident, dangerous. Troy swallowed. What? Did you find? Jack didn't answer. He only stared. Let him feel it. Let him know. Then slowly, he said one line, the one that would anchor the entire night. Lies wear a familiar face when you want to believe them. Troy flinched. Maverick growled. Jack leaned closer, voice low. And I don't believe a damn thing anymore. The fire snapped louder. And in that moment, Troy Delaney stopped pretending to be harmless. Tomorrow, Jack doesn't just hunt for a missing person. He hunts for proof. And the forest finally starts answering back. Troy stared at Jack like a man waiting for a verdict that was already sealed in stone. Jack didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes said enough. The fire between them cast long shadows, cutting across Troy's face and making every twitch, every blink, every swallow look twice as guilty. Maverick sat close to Jack, muscles tight, head, low, eyes locked on the man across the flames. He hadn't taken his eyes off him since Jack returned. You're making a mistake, Troy muttered, his voice quieter now, like he was trying to avoid setting something off. I told you I tried to help her. Jack didn't blink. That's not what she wrote. Troy's eyes darted. He looked toward the trees. Nowhere to go, not with Maverick watching him like prey on a chain. I lied. Troy admitted, finally, voice cracking under the weight of it. Okay, I panicked. I thought if I said I was Ben, you'd take me seriously. But I wasn't the one who hurt her. That was Sawyer and Mitch. I just wanted to survive. Jack leaned forward, arms on his knees, voice quiet. You put on a dead man's face. You don't get to play scared now. I didn't kill him, Troy snapped. I didn't even touch him. I just ran when things went bad. Jack's jaw clenched. Maverick growled low, deliberate. Jack raised one hand gently, and Maverick went quiet, but the warning hung in the air like smoke. A dog doesn't lie, Jack said, eyes fixed on Troy. And mine just declared you guilty. Troy looked at Maverick, and something in his expression twisted, not fear, but hatred. He looked at the dog like he understood he wasn't just outmatched. He was outclassed, hunted. I can help you find her, Troy offered, switching tones. Smooth, calculated. I know where they were keeping her. I heard them talking. There's an old cove on the far side of the island. North side. Hidden by rocks. That's where Sawyer said they'd stashed the gear. That's probably where they took her. Jack didn't respond immediately. He studied him, parsing the half-truths, waiting for the tell. You heard them talking, Jack asked slowly. Or you helped them move her, Troy? Hesitated. Jack saw it. You're just trying to keep yourself alive, he said, standing. That's not the same as telling the truth. He walked over to his gear and picked up a length of nylon rope. Maverick didn't move. He didn't need to. Troy had gone pale. You're gonna tie me up, Troy said, rising to his feet. Come on, man. I came to you. I didn't have to. You didn't come to me, Jack said coldly. You waited for the next sucker to land. He tossed the rope at Troy's feet. You tie your hands, behind your back, or I'll let him do it. Troy looked at Maverick, then bent down and started tying. Jack double-checked the knots when he was done. Tight. secure. "You're staying here," Jack said. "Me and Mav are going to the cove." Troy started to say something, but Jack walked away before the words even formed. Dawn had barely lit the sky when Jack and Maverick began their hike. The trail was rough, no clear path, just instinct and signs. Maverick sniffed out broken underbrush, faint traces of ash and oil, and something sharper, fear. The forest shifted the deeper they moved north. Trees grew denser, shadows stretched longer, and every sound felt like it came from underground. Jack moved like he had in Warzone's eyes, scanning body-low senses drawn tight. He thought about the word Lauren had used in her journal, they. Not just Sawyer, not just Troy. A third man, and now the possibility that Ben might still be alive somewhere on this island. Every step was layered with urgency. The terrain began to slope downward. Granite boulders appeared scattered like bones across the moss. Maverick veered left and let out a single bark. Jack followed. The trees suddenly opened. There it was, a narrow inlet almost invisible from the water unless you flew right over it. The shoreline curved into a natural cove hemmed in by rock walls. Jack crouched behind a thicket, binoculars up. A boat. Not wrecked. Tethered. Crates under tarp. A jerry can of fuel half buried near the brush. Campfire remnants. A small trail worn into the ground leading into the tree line behind it. And someone was there. Broad-shouldered. Shaggy beard. Moving slow, tending to the boat's engine. No weapon in hand. Sawyer. Maverick growled softly beside Jack. Jack turned to the dog. Stay. He circled wide, moving low, using the rocks as cover. When he got close, he waited until the wind was right, blowing toward the water, carrying his scent away. He moved fast. Sawyer turned just as Jack grabbed him. The man reached for something, a wrench maybe, but Jack slammed him into the hull and drove his elbow into his ribs. Sawyer groaned and collapsed. Jack didn't wait. He pulled his zip ties from his belt and bound the man's wrists behind his back, yanking them tight until Sawyer cursed. "You make one sound," Jack whispered. "I'll let the dog finish this." Sawyer's eyes widened. Jack pulled the tarp back from the crates. Supplies, radios, one clearly labeled frequency modulator, UHF locked, smuggler gear, military grade. Then he turned to the boat's cabin. The door creaked open. She was there, curled in the corner, dirt smeared, eyes closed. Lauren, Jack said softly. Her eyes snapped open. Fear. Confusion. "Who I'm Jack," he said. "Your journal found me." She didn't speak, just looked past him toward the sound of Sawyer groaning. "Is he? He's not going to hurt you again." She nodded slowly like her brain was catching up to her body. "I can walk," she said, already standing. Jack moved to steady her, but she waved him off. "She's tough," he said to himself. Behind them, Maverick appeared, watching from the brush. Lauren's eyes softened. "That your dog?" Jack nodded. She crouched down and Maverick stepped forward, slowly sniffed her hand, then gently pressed his head against it. That was all Jack needed. They moved quickly back into the woods, taking a different route away from the cove toward safer ground. They would need to regroup, get answers, and prepare, because the third man was still out there, and Ben might be with him. Jack looked over at Lauren. "Can you tell me everything you remember? I can try," she said. "But you're gonna want to sit down when I do." Jack didn't stop walking. "No time," he said. "We're going back to the fire. And when we do," he thought, "Troy's going to have some explaining to do. Jack didn't speak as they walked. Not when Lauren stumbled. Not when she winced at the bruise blooming under her eye. Not when Maverick looked back every 10 yards to check if they were being followed. He said nothing, but his silence weighed more than words. Lauren didn't ask where they were going. She didn't care. She just wanted away from the cove. From the boxy boat cabin where the smell of fuel and fear had seeped into her skin. She wanted air, that didn't taste like captivity. Still, she watched Jack closely. His movements were too clean for a civilian. The way he walked, shoulders square, head scanning, never exposing his flank. The way he held his rifle like it was a limb and not a tool. "You're military," she said quietly. "Was." He didn't elaborate. She understood. Some things get left behind on purpose. When they reached the tree line that bordered the old camp, Jack stopped. The fire pit was cold. Troy was gone. The rope was sliced clean through edges frayed and damp. Jack crouched beside it, scanning the ground. Maverick moved in a tight circle, sniffing aggressively. Jack ran 2 fingers across a partial boot print in the moss. Fresh. And not far. He stood up fast. "He's running," Jack muttered. "Northwest." Lauren glanced in the direction of the cove. "You think he's going back to them?" Jack didn't answer. He was already moving. Maverick took the lead nose to the earth. Jack followed rifle up, Lauren behind them keeping pace despite her limp. They crossed 2 shallow creeks, a game trail, and a half-collapsed hunting blind. The footprints became easier to read the deeper into the woods they pushed. Less camouflage. More panic. Eventually Maverick slowed and stood at the edge of a clearing. Jack joined him and froze. A cache site. Half dug. Recently disturbed. Pine boughs pulled across a mound of dirt and branches. Sloppy. Jack knelt, clearing away the cover. Beneath it, a blood-stained navy jacket. Torn at the sleeve. Faded letters on the collar. "Whitaker," Lauren sucked in a breath behind him. Jack didn't turn around. A small pack lay beside it. Jack opened it. Inside a compass, a military-style knife, a few protein bars still sealed in plastic, and a roll of gauze with dried blood on the edge. He held up the knife. No rust. Recently cleaned. "This was intentional," Jack said. "Somebody buried this to hide it, not to discard it." Lauren nodded slowly, then pointed. "That's Ben's compass. He always clipped it to his belt when we hiked." Jack stood. "Then we're not too late." She moved beside him, staring down at the blood on the jacket. "How much blood is too much before you stop hoping?" Jack didn't look at her when he said, "As long as there's no body, you don't stop." They stood in silence for a few more seconds, before Maverick let out a sharp bark. Jack turned. The dog was at the edge of the clearing, front paws digging, tail stiff. He was focused on something. Jack approached quickly. Beneath the thin brush, a trail. A real one. Boot prints. 2 pairs. Fresh. Jack crouched, inspecting them closely. One set was heavy, deep heel impressions dragging slightly. Injured. The other lighter. Pacing around the heavier ones. Waiting. Watching. This wasn't Troy, Jack said almost to himself. He's still running scared. This is someone else. Lauren stiffened. Mitch. Jack nodded. He stood, eyes narrowing. The forest doesn't keep secrets. If you bleed, it remembers. Lauren gave him a look. What does that mean? It means Mitch is trying to clean something up, Jack said. And if Ben was bleeding when they took him, they're running out of places to hide him. He pointed up the slope. These prints go west. toward the granite ridgeline. That's the same direction Troy said they'd stashed supplies. Jack gave a cold smile. Guess we'll see what his lies are worth. They followed the tracks, staying low. Maverick moved a few yards ahead, nose down, ears flicking. Jack's muscles tensed with every step, but his breathing stayed measured. Lauren kept up surprisingly well, silent, determined, driven by something primal. Hope is a hell of a drug. An hour passed before they reached the next sign, a tree with bark stripped clean in one long vertical line. Jack touched it. Knife scrape, he said. Deliberate. A signal. Jack nodded. For someone watching. He turned toward Maverick. The dog had stopped pointing into a ravine. Jack followed. They moved slowly through a thick clutch of trees until the landscape dropped suddenly into a sharp, narrow gulch. The air changed damp, metallic. And then they heard it. A cough. Weak, raspy, human. Jack's rifle came up instantly. Lauren froze, her breath hitched. Another sound. Rustling. Jack motioned for her to stay. He descended into the ravine with Maverick, close steps, slow but certain. There beneath an outcrop of stone, half covered in a thermal blanket. A man. Face bruised. One eye swollen shut. Shirt soaked in blood. But alive. Jack approached carefully. Ben. The man stirred, turned his head with effort. His good eye locked onto Jack, then shifted to the dog. Relief washed across his battered features. I knew someone would come, he croaked. Jack dropped to a knee beside him, checking his pulse. Stronger than he expected. Lauren appeared beside them a second later, kneeling. Her hands shook as she touched Ben's cheek. I thought you were I'm here, Ben whispered. Jack looked around. No sign of Mitch. No fresh tracks leaving the ravine. This wasn't a dump site, he said. They left him here to die. Or as bait. Lauren looked up sharply. Bait for who Jack stood, scanning the ridgeline. His eyes narrowed. For us. Maverick barked once sharp, then another sound echoed down the slope. Gunfire. 3 shots. Not far. Toward the direction of their old camp. Jack turned to Lauren. Stay with him. Keep your head down. He locked eyes with Maverick. Let's go. He ran uphill without another word, Maverick sprinting beside him. Heart pounding. Only one thought in his head now. Troy came back. And this time he wasn't alone. Jack sprinted through the forest like he'd done it 100 times. Because he had. Different continent. Different war. Same instincts. Maverick stayed at his side, silent, but wired muscles flexed, teeth flashing every time a branch whipped past them. The shots had come fast. 3 spaced tight. Not warning shots. Not wild. That was someone aiming to hit something or someone. As they crested the hill, the fire pit clearing came into view. It was chaos. The camp had been torn apart. Packs slashed. The tarp that had covered their gear now shredded and tossed in the dirt. One of the fuel cans was missing. No sign of Troy, but footprints all over the place, boot tracks heavy with speed and bad decisions. Jack scanned the perimeter. No bodies. No blood. Maverick growled, low, ears twitching. Jack knelt, touched the earth beside the fire ring. Still warm. Someone had been here less than 5 minutes ago. He spotted the faint imprint of a knee and the impression of a rifle butt in the soil. Sniper position. Someone had eyes on this spot, and Jack knew what that meant. They'd drawn him away from Ben and Lauren. His gut turned. He stood fast, eyes raking the tree line. A rustle behind him. He turned hard rifle up and came face to face with Mitch. The man was older than Jack expected. Late 40s, maybe 50. Weathered face eyes sunken deep under a brow that looked carved from stone. He wore a green parka half unzipped, revealing a black pistol strapped tight to his chest. And he wasn't surprised to see Jack. "You're fast," Mitch said, calm as a Sunday preacher. "But not fast enough." Jack didn't blink. "Where's Troy?" Mitch smiled. "Left him where he belongs. Mouthy bastard got greedy." Jack edged a half step to the right. Maverick flanked him, left circling. "I'm guessing you were hoping I'd come running," Jack said. Mitch nodded. "You left them down in that ravine, with Ben barely breathing and Lauren too loyal to leave him. Thought I'd have time to finish the job." Jack's voice went cold. "You touch either of them, I don't need to." Mitch cut in. "Not yet. They're pinned. And you're already standing in your grave." He raised his weapon fast, but not faster than Maverick. The dog lunged like a missile, teeth sinking into Mitch's forearm just as he fired. The shot went wild, ripped through a tree trunk. Jack charged forward, slammed his shoulder into Mitch's chest, driving him backward. They crashed hard into the ground, Maverick twisting free, just in time. Mitch swung a fist, caught Jack in the jaw, but Jack didn't flinch. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisted it hard until the pistol dropped into the dirt. Jack kicked it away. Mitch grunted and tried to knee him, but Jack pinned him fast, arm across his throat. "You really think this is about cargo anymore?" Jack hissed. "You think anyone's getting off this island?" Mitch gasped, spit flying. "You don't know who we work for." "I don't care." Jack drove his fist into the side of Mitch's face once, twice, until the man went limp. He stood, chest heaving. Maverick returned to his side, breathing hard, but unharmed. Jack wiped the blood from his knuckles and looked down at Mitch. "You said the wrong words to the wrong man." He grabbed the man's pistol and slung it into his belt, then stripped off the radio strapped to his shoulder. The headset still hummed low, quiet. Someone was listening. Jack pressed the transmit button. "This is your final warning," he said into the mic. "You come for her again, I come for you." He dropped the radio and crushed it under his boot. Then he turned to Maverick. "Let's go back." They ran downhill, retracing their steps, feet pounding the forest floor. The wind had picked up cold and sharp, slicing through the trees. Jack's thoughts raced faster than his legs. He didn't know how many more men Mitch had with him. Didn't know how much firepower they had hidden on the island. But he knew this Lauren and Ben weren't just witnesses. They were targets. And someone had sent Mitch to make sure there were no survivors. When they reached the ravine, Jack slowed. He raised a fist. Maverick froze. Then voices, low, whispered. He crept to the edge and looked down. Lauren sat beside Ben, her body curled in front of him protectively. Ben looked worse, face, gray lips, cracked, but alive. And behind them, slowly approaching, a new figure. Young, maybe mid-20s, nervous, pale, holding a rifle like he didn't know how to use it. Jack exhaled, a wild card. He stepped out from the trees and aimed his weapon. "Drop it." The man jumped like he'd been shocked, spun toward Jack and fumbled his grip. Don't shoot." "I'm just supposed to watch them," he stammered. Jack kept his voice calm. "You working with Mitch?" The guy nodded quickly, fear soaking his face. "I didn't sign up for this," he said. "I thought we were just moving supplies. I didn't know about the girl or the guy they left to die." Jack descended slowly, never lowering his weapon. "What's your name, Lucas?" Lucas, as you get a choice right now, Jack said. You help me get them off this island, or you end up in the ground with Mitch. Lucas dropped the rifle. I don't want any part of this. Jack nodded once, then turned to Lauren. We're moving now. Lauren helped Jack lift Ben gently, wrapping his arm around her shoulder. Jack looked at Lucas. You know where the pickup point is? Lucas nodded. North Shore. Big Rock Arch. They're coming tonight. How many I don't know. Maybe 2, maybe 5. Depends who's still alive. Jack clenched his jaw. They had one shot. He turned to Lauren. We're going to that pickup point. We're taking their boat. Lauren stared at him, and then what Jack's eyes went steely. Then we burn their plan to the ground. As they started the long walk toward the North Shore, Jack looked back one last time. The ravine was quiet again, but not peaceful. When justice doesn't come knocking, sometimes you bring the door with you. And Jack intended to bring it loud. The woods seemed to lean in tighter around them as they moved. The sun, low in the sky, cast long blades of light through the canopy, illuminating patches of dirt and rock like a spotlight before vanishing again. Jack took point rifle ready, his eyes never still. Lauren helped Ben behind him, her grip firm despite the way her muscles trembled with fatigue. Lucas followed, carrying most of the weight from the few supplies they had left. Maverick stayed close, weaving between them, ears alert, nose low. There was no trail now, no road, just instinct and urgency. The pickup point Lucas described was a natural arch of stone rising out of the sea, visible from a narrow inlet on the island's north edge. According to him, the others, whoever remained, were expecting extraction at nightfall. That gave them less than 4 hours. Jack wasn't sure if they'd make it. Ben was fading. He hadn't spoken in nearly 20 minutes, just groaned when the pain became unbearable. His right leg had stiffened completely, and the bandage Jack had wrapped earlier was soaked through with blood. His skin had the dull, waxy look of someone fighting to stay conscious. Lauren didn't say a word about it. She just kept moving. That silence was louder than panic. Jack paused as they reached a ridge overlooking a valley of tall grass and low pines. He motioned for the group to stop and crouched low, binoculars up. Maverick laid beside him, nose twitching, eyes forward. He scanned the tree line, slow and methodical. There it was, the arch, 100 yards off the shore, rising from the water like a jagged tooth. Beneath it, a small beach tucked between natural rock walls. Jack spotted the faint glint of metal, another boat smaller than the one in the cove moored behind a curtain of reef rocks. 2 men patrolled near it, armed. He turned back. 2 guards at the beach. We get past them, we take the boat. That's our way off this island. Lucas looked uncertain. What if there's more? There probably is. Jack turned to Lauren. How's he doing? She looked at Ben, her eyes red but sharp. He's awake. Barely. Ben heard them and forced a smile. Don't count me out yet. Jack gave a brief nod. We wait until dark. Then we move. They tucked themselves just below the ridge within the shadow of a rocky overhang. Jack checked weapons, his rifle, the pistol taken from Mitch, a folding knife he kept taped to his thigh. Lucas had a sidearm he barely knew how to aim, and Lauren carried the flare gun from the cove. Jack looked at her. You ever shoot one of these before? She shook her head. Point, aim, pull the trigger. Don't think, just do. She gave a tight nod and tucked it into the waistband of her jeans. Time crawled like old blood. Jack spent it watching the guards below, mapping their rhythm. They moved lazily, overconfident. That would be their mistake. When darkness finally spilled across the sky, they moved. Jack took the lead, slipping through the trees like shadow. Maverick kept beside him, low and ghost-like. Lucas helped Lauren guide Ben, who bit down on every sound his body tried to make. The trail wound down the ridge, cutting into narrow rock formations and patches of sand that tried to slide underfoot. Jack raised a hand, and they stopped. The guards were 20 yards ahead, talking softly. One had a flashlight, lazily sweeping the area like he wasn't expecting trouble. The other had his rifle slung across his back. Jack motioned. Lucas nodded, peeled off left. Jack moved right. The signal was Maverick's bark. One sharp, sudden. The guard snapped toward the sound. Lauren fired the flare gun. The sky lit up, burning red fire arcing across the darkness, streaking overhead like a warning shot from God. Jack was already moving. He hit the first man from the side, knocking him down and slamming the butt of his rifle into his jaw. The other guard scrambled to raise his weapon, but Maverick lunged, sinking teeth into the man's arm. The rifle fell. Jack crossed the sand in 3 steps and dropped him with a clean strike to the temple. Silence fell. Smoke hissed from the flare in the sky. Its red glow reflected in the ocean and cast eerie shadows over the beach. Lauren came running with Lucas and Ben. Jack checked the guards, breathing, disarmed. "We're clear," he said, standing. They turned to the boat. It was real. Gassed. Keys in the ignition. Satellite phone in the glove box. A small crate of sealed rations in the back. Fuel, water, maps. Jack stared at it like it was too easy. Ben broke the spell. "This isn't their ride." Jack turned. What Ben pointed to the sat phone. "That model doesn't reach long range. They weren't using it to call for help. They were using it to call each other." Jack grabbed the phone, flipped it on. 1 number logged. A short frequency. Local relay. He cursed under his breath. "This boat wasn't for leaving," he said. "It was for surveillance." Someone was keeping watch. "Then where's the real extraction?" Lauren asked. Jack looked at the arch and saw the blinking light. Red. Then green. A signal. He raised the binoculars again. Beyond the arch, farther out, something moved. A ship. Low in the water. Lights off. Sharp hull, moving slow. 10 miles out, Jack muttered. "They're coming in now." Lucas stepped forward, eyes wide. "That's not a smuggler. That's a patrol ship." Jack stared. Military silhouette. Covert tech. No flag. He didn't answer for a long beat. "Then they're not here to pick up survivors." Lauren's voice dropped. "Then what are they here for?" Jack held up the sat phone. "There's no proof left on this island. No evidence. Unless we bring them something they can't erase." Ben exhaled. "That would be me." Jack shook his head. "You won't make the swim." "I don't have to." Jack turned to Lucas. "You're going to help me get close. I'll board the ship." Lauren stepped forward, fear pushing against her resolve. "That's suicide." Jack met her eyes. Calm, steady. Sometimes the only way to stop the fire is to walk straight into it. She didn't argue. She just nodded. Ben looked up. "You better come back with hell behind you." Jack gave a tired grin. "No, I'm bringing it with me." They pushed the boat out into the surf. Jack and Lucas climbed aboard. Jack adjusted the throttle, muffled the engine under a wool blanket. Maverick stood on the shore beside Lauren and Ben, ears back, tail low. Jack looked back once. He saw everything he needed to fight for. Then he faced the open water. and the ship waiting at the edge of the dark. This wasn't escape. This was war. The sea was black glass, broken only by the soft pulse of the waves against the bow. Jack sat low behind the console, one hand on the throttle, eyes fixed on the horizon. The ship, dark, silent, impossible, grew larger with every passing minute. Its profile cut the sky like a blade. No flag, no lights, no call signs. A ghost ship with real teeth. Lucas sat beside him, pale under the starlight. His fingers twisted the strap of his rifle, but he hadn't touched the trigger. He kept glancing back at the island behind them, at the faint firelight flickering on the shoreline where Ben and Lauren waited. His face said what he wouldn't fear: regret, guilt. Jack spoke without looking at him. "You still got a choice." Lucas blinked. "To do what? Turn this thing around?" Lucas gave a weak laugh. "It's too late, man. I'm already in it." Jack tightened his grip on the wheel. "Then don't flinch when the shooting starts." The boat cut across the current in a wide arc, keeping its engine barely above a whisper. Jack had pulled the muffler trick in Iraq, once coasting up to a pirate ship that doubled as a weapons freighter. That one ended in flames. He hoped this wouldn't. As they neared the ship, Lucas pointed. "Portside ladder, midship." Jack adjusted course. They pulled alongside slowly. The military cruiser loomed over them, tall as a building, windows blacked out. No voices, no movement. Then a voice crackled from a speaker above. "Identify yourself." Lucas froze. Jack grabbed the radio. "Code 617, Moosehead clearance. Personnel pickup confirmed." Silence. Then a dull clunk. A ladder dropped. Jack turned to Lucas. "Stay here. If I'm not back in 15 minutes, you run this boat back to the beach." Lucas opened his mouth to protest, but Jack was already climbing. The metal was slick with sea spray. Jack ascended fast, muscles burning, pulse even. At the top, he pulled himself onto the deck. Two men waited, both armed, dressed in black tactical gear, no insignias. One of them raised an eyebrow. "You're not Myers." Jack smiled grimly. "No. I'm the man Myers was supposed to meet." He stepped forward slowly. "You got something in the hold I need to see." The taller of the two men stepped into Jack's path. "I don't think you understand how this works." Jack's tone turned cold. "I understand perfectly. I also understand your radio logs are empty, your cameras are off, and your crew's been on blackout since arrival, which means someone's trying to clean a slate." The second man's hand went to his weapon. Jack struck first. Elbow to the throat, pivot, kick to the knee. The man went down hard. The taller one pulled his sidearm, but Jack twisted his wrist, wrenching it sideways, the gun clattering to the deck. A sharp jab to the ribs dropped him. Two down. No alarms yet. Jack dragged them behind a vent system and stripped one of the vests, slipped it on, grabbed a keycard. He moved fast, silent down the corridor. The ship was strangely empty. Lights dimmed, doors locked. Jack passed a control room with a glowing screen location tracker. The ship hadn't pinged the mainland in over 36 hours. This wasn't a transport vessel. It was a cleanup crew. Jack reached the lower deck and found a secured panel marked Hold 3. Swiped the card. The door hissed open. Inside, rows of crates. Government tags stripped. One was open. He looked inside. Hard drives. Video files, medical reports. A second crate held surveillance photos of the island, of Lauren, of Ben, of him. Jack's chest tightened, and there it was on the far wall, a server rack still blinking. He moved fast, pulling a flash drive from his vest, jacked it into the port. The screen flickered. A loading bar appeared. Copying data, 3 minutes remaining. Footsteps. He ducked behind the rack, pistol raised. 2 men entered, voices low. One was someone Jack hadn't seen before, mid-30s, shaved head, calm. The kind of calm that usually came before bloodshed. The other was Myers, still alive. Jack's hand tensed. Myers walked to the server. "They'll torch this whole thing by morning. Orders from the top." The bald man nodded. "We've got everything replicated on a black site. This is just for scrubbing." Myers laughed. Funny. The girl thought she could just talk, like someone out there would care. Jack rose behind them. Someone out there does. They turned too late. 2 shots. 1 man down. Myers stumbled, shot in the shoulder. Jack crossed the room in 2 steps and slammed him into the wall. "You took her voice," Jack growled. "Now I'm taking yours." He yanked the flash drive as the loading bar hit 100%, then pistol-whipped Myers into unconsciousness. Jack stuffed the drive into a pouch and checked the hallway. Still quiet. Then the alarm sounded. Red lights strobed. A voice over the intercom: "Unauthorized breach deck 3. Lockdown in progress." Jack ran, back up the stairs, toward the deck. Gunfire rattled somewhere above. He burst onto the upper level as more men spilled out of the bridge. Lucas had started the boat. Jack saw him yelling, waving, "Jump!" Jack sprinted, bullets pinging behind him, feet pounding metal. He vaulted over the side. Splash! The cold hit like a punch. He kicked hard surface to Lucas, screaming, "Get in a..." Jack grabbed the rope rail and hauled himself into the boat. Lucas gunned the throttle. Behind them, the cruiser erupted in shouts. Someone fired. Bullets struck the water, but the boat veered sharply and disappeared into the dark. They didn't stop until the lights were long gone. Lucas slowed, panting. "You get it," Jack held up the drive. "Every last secret." He looked at the island, small now, distant, still burning. "You can bury the truth, but if it's still breathing, it will claw its way back to the surface." And now the truth was alive and armed, ready to be heard. And Jack was going to make damn sure no one could silence it again. Pain was the first thing Jack felt. Then cold. Then smoke in his throat. He opened his eyes to a sky smeared with ash and broken trees. The fuselage cracked in half behind him like a split shell. Metal groaned somewhere nearby. Fire licked at one of the pontoons, crackling under black smoke. He rolled onto his side and coughed hard, tasting blood and grit. Every part of him screamed, but nothing felt broken. He was lucky. He wasn't sure the others were. Jack forced himself up, staggering toward the wreckage. The impact had torn the back of the plane wide open, seats scattered across a slope of dirt and broken pine. "Lauren," he shouted, hoarse. A cough answered him. Then another. He followed the sound. Lauren was on her side in the dirt. Blood trickling from her hairline, but conscious. Beside her, Ben groaned, half-pinned under a piece of the bulkhead. Jack dropped to his knees. "Hold still." He wedged his shoulder beneath the twisted panel and lifted. Lauren dragged Ben free, cradling his head. "He's alive," she said, voice cracking. "But we need to move. Now." Jack nodded and looked around. "Where's Lucas?" Another groan farther off. Maverick was already there, pawing at a tangle of branches. Jack followed the dog and found Lucas stuck in a cluster of brush, his leg bent awkwardly, but not broken. "You good?" Lucas grunted. "Define good." Jack hauled him upright. "You breathing barely. Then you're good." The drive was still strapped to Lucas's chest, the small black pouch intact. Jack checked it, exhaled when he saw the green LED still blinking. "Everything we need to burn them down," he muttered. He looked toward the sky. No drones yet. No helicopters. But that wouldn't last. We've got 20 minutes, maybe less, before they come looking. Lauren helped Ben to his feet. He could barely stand, leaning on her fully now. His face was gray. Sweat streamed down his temples. Jack moved to the gear they'd salvaged: first aid kits, a flare, the pistol. Everything else was lost in the fire. Lucas limped over. "We were supposed to upload this at the tower." "We still heading there?" Jack nodded. "We're maybe 3 miles out. Rough terrain, but if we move now..." A gunshot cracked through the trees. Everyone dropped. Jack hit the dirt, eyes scanning fast. Another shot. Closer. Not a warning. "They're already here," he said. "They must have tracked the beacon." Lucas looked panicked. "They were jamming us before we even crashed." "What if they're tracking the drive?" Jack turned to him, calm. "Then we run faster than they can catch." He moved first, keeping low, Maverick at his side. Lauren followed with Ben, and Lucas brought up the rear. The forest was dense, slick with rain pine needles and fallen limbs, but it gave cover. Jack knew how to use that. He guided them along an old drainage path, then into a gully that climbed toward a ridge. The tower would be there, if it still stood. Another shot rang out. Then a voice. "Jack." "Blake, you don't have to run," it echoed, strange and cold. Lauren froze. "They know your name." Jack didn't slow. "They know everything. That's why we can't stop." They crested the ridge and found it. The weather tower. Old. Rusted. Half collapsed. But the satellite dish at the top still stood crooked but intact. The small access shed below was locked with a chain. Jack shot it off and pushed inside. Dust. Cobwebs. But a solar battery still blinked. Alive. Lucas dropped to his knees and yanked the laptop from the emergency box. "Please tell me you remember the encryption passphrase." Jack tossed him a weathered field notebook. Bottom page. Lucas opened it, typed fast. The drive plugged in with a soft click. The screen lit up, upload in progress. The bar moved slow, too slow. Outside, Jack stood, watch pistol drawn. Lauren crouched beside Ben, holding his hand. He wasn't moving much now. "Stay with me," she whispered. Jack looked at her. "If they breach this hill..." Lauren shook her head. "Then we don't let them take it." Maverick growled low. The sound rippled across the clearing like thunder. Then came the first figure stepping from the trees. Not masked, not hidden. Mitch. His face was bloodied but smug, somehow still alive. Behind him, 3 more. Rifles up. "We don't need to kill you," Mitch called. "Just give us the drive." Jack raised his pistol. "I've heard that before." Mitch smiled. "You really think anyone's going to believe some rogue pilot and a half-dead witness? This doesn't end with a trial, Jack. It ends with silence." Jack stepped forward. "No. It ends here. Some truths don't need a courtroom, they just need to survive long enough to be heard." Gunfire erupted. Jack dropped behind a tree. Maverick launched forward, teeth flashing. Lauren pulled Ben to cover, shielding his body with hers. Bullets ripped through bark. Lucas shouted from inside the shed. 60%. Jack popped out, fired twice. One of Mitch's men went down. Another flanked left. Jack rolled behind a stump, returned fire. 80%. Mitch advanced slowly, using a fallen log for cover. "You don't get it, do you?" he shouted. "Even if that drive uploads, no one's coming for you. They'll bury this with you." Jack looked toward the shed. 95. He took a breath, then ran. Straight at Mitch. The man fired. Missed. Jack tackled him hard, the pistol flying. They rolled through the dirt, fists swinging. Mitch grabbed Jack's throat. "You should have stayed down." Jack slammed his elbow into Mitch's jaw. "You should have known better than to leave me breathing." He punched once, twice. Lucas screamed, "Upload complete." Jack staggered to his feet, blood on his face, chest heaving. Mitch crawled backwards, stunned. Then the sound of sirens. Helicopters. Far off, but coming. Jack stared down at Mitch. "You're not in control anymore." The sky cracked with the sound of rotors. Jack turned to Lauren. "We did it." Ben smiled faintly, eyes closing. Maverick barked once, sharp and certain. They weren't running anymore. Now the world was coming to them. The rotor wash of the black UH-72 kicked up debris as the helicopter touched down on the remote forest clearing. Jack stood just outside the shed, hand still gripping the pistol. His heart was thundering, blood smeared across his shirt, and the taste of adrenaline burned the back of his throat. But it was done. The truth was out. He watched as 4 tactical agents disembarked, quick, precise, no insignias. These weren't rescue medics or soldiers. They were cleanup, damage control. But for now, they were the only bridge between survival and silence. One of them stepped forward, weapon lowered but ready. "Jack Blake." Jack nodded. "You have the payload," he gestured to the shed. "Uploaded to a secure open channel. It's already duplicated on multiple decentralized nodes. Kill me and it still burns the house down." The agent didn't smile. "Copy that." The team fanned out, 2 of them rushing toward Ben, who lay barely conscious with Lauren pressed against him, shielding his body. One agent checked his pulse, called for a med kit, and immediately began assessing trauma. Maverick barked once, just enough to say, "I'm watching you." Jack took a breath, allowing himself to believe for just a second that they might actually make it out alive. Lucas climbed out of the shed with the flash drive still in hand, gripping it like a relic. "It's all on here too. Physical backup. Just in case." The lead agent took it gently, slid it into a sealed evidence pouch. "You're smarter than you look." Lucas grunted. "I've had a rough couple of days." Minutes later, they were airborne. The helicopter lifted over the trees, the wreckage and the ruined clearing vanishing beneath them. Jack sat beside Lauren, one hand resting on Maverick's back. Across from them, Lucas sat with the same pale, stunned look he'd worn since the crash. The only difference was the flicker of fire in his eyes. They had done it. But the silence inside the cabin wasn't relief. It was the calm before the next war. Ben had an oxygen mask pressed to his face, his breathing shallow but steady. The med team worked quickly, sealing his leg, inserting fluids, stabilizing him for transfer. "Will he make it?" Lauren asked the nearest medic. "He's critical," the medic replied without glancing up. "But with surgery, he's got a chance." She closed her eyes. Jack reached out and squeezed her hand. They touched down an hour later at a private airstrip carved into the edge of a pine forest. Waiting for them were 3 black SUVs and a woman in a slate-gray suit standing with her arms crossed, face unreadable heels tapping on the concrete like a metronome of control. As Jack stepped off the chopper, she approached. "Mr. Blake, you've made quite a mess." Jack stared at her. "And you're here to clean it." "I'm here," she said flatly, "to contain it." Lauren and Lucas stepped beside him. "You're not burying it," Lauren said. "We didn't come all this way for a cover-up." The woman didn't flinch. "It's already out there. That's your doing, and it will stay out for now. But we decide how far the fire spreads, not you. Jack narrowed his eyes. Why does it feel like you're threatening us? Because I am, she said, calm as ever. You three are now classified assets. If you breathe wrong, someone will notice. If you speak to the wrong journalist, someone will respond. You want justice. It'll come in drops, not floods. Lucas spoke for the first time. So what? You use it as leverage. We use it to avoid collapse. Lauren shook her head. There's no fixing what they did unless people know. They will, the woman said. Eventually. But only what they need to know. In the meantime, you'll be relocated, protected, quiet. Jack folded his arms. You think we're just going to disappear? I think, she replied, stepping closer. You'll do what's necessary to stay alive. Because what you uncovered doesn't just implicate people, it implicates systems. And if you want to live long enough to see justice, you don't kick the whole tower down in one blow. He didn't answer. She gestured toward one of the SUVs. There's a safe house 200 miles north. Off-grid. No surveillance. No contact. You'll stay there until the committee decides how to proceed. Committee, Jack scoffed. Which alphabet agency is calling the shots this week? The woman only smiled. Let's just say, people with more to lose than you. Maverick growled. Jack crouched beside him, calming the dog, whispering something only he could hear. They helped Ben into a medical transport. He was stable now, barely lucid, but he gripped Jack's wrist as they loaded him in. Don't let them bury it, he rasped. Even if I don't make it. Jack nodded. You'll make it. You're too stubborn not to. As the door shut, the woman returned. You'll have 24 hours to get settled. After that, no contact unless authorized. If we need you, we'll come. Lauren stepped into the SUV, but before Jack followed, he turned back to the woman. You know, he said quietly, for a long time I thought doing the right thing meant being silent, being invisible, letting someone else fight the fight. She raised an eyebrow. And now sometimes truth doesn't set you free. It just burns the lies off your skin, so you can finally feel what's real. She didn't respond. But for the first time she looked uncomfortable. That was enough. The SUV rolled out in silence. No GPS, no phones, just gravel roads and long pine shadows. Jack sat in the back seat watching the trees blur the sky darkening above them. Beside him, Lucas whispered, So, what are we now? Jack looked at him. What we always were. Survivors. Lauren turned from the front seat. And maybe something more. They drove for hours. When they finally reached the safe house, a small cabin buried deep in the woods, it looked almost peaceful. Smoke rose from the chimney. A generator buzzed in the back. Inside was warm, quiet, simple. Too simple. Jack stood at the doorway for a long moment, then turned to the others. This isn't the end. Lauren smiled softly. No. But it's the first time we can breathe. They stepped inside, and for the first time in a long while they didn't have to run. The cabin creaked with every gust of wind, a soft reminder that they were still far from safety. Snow drifted outside the windows, now thin, and early dusting the pine branches like ghost frost. Inside, warmth from the fireplace hummed low, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. It had been 6 days since the upload. 6 days since the crash. Since the blood. Since the world shifted under their feet. Jack sat at the dining table poring over printouts and maps provided by their anonymous handlers. Across from him, Lucas tapped a pen nervously against a half-used notepad, eyes flicking toward the door every time the floorboards creaked. Lauren stood in the kitchen pouring coffee she hadn't touched. The cabin had running water food, even a weak satellite uplink, but no cell signal, no internet, no news, no contact. They were safe. For now. But isolation had a way of twisting peace into suspicion. "You think they're stalling Lucas?" finally asked, breaking the silence. Jack didn't look up. "Definitely." Lauren turned. "Then why haven't they shut us up yet?" Jack set down his pen. "Because right now we're more valuable alive than dead." Lucas scoffed. "That's comforting." Jack leaned back. "They don't want a martyr story. They want us to vanish slowly, buried under bureaucracy and classified briefings until the public forgets we ever mattered." Lauren came closer. "But something's changed. You feel it too?" Jack nodded. "There's movement. I've been watching the satellite system they left half-connected. I found a ping encrypted traffic bouncing off a tower we weren't supposed to know exists." Lucas blinked. "You tapped their own back channel." Jack smiled slightly. "I didn't survive this long by playing fair." Lauren's voice was soft. "What did you see?" Jack reached for a page he'd hidden under the others. "Coordinates. To an airstrip in Montana. Remote. Military adjacent. 3 names tagged for transfer." He slid the page across the table. Lauren's eyes narrowed. "These names. They're on the upload." Jack nodded. "Someone's moving them. Fast and quiet. Before the media can catch on." Lucas stepped back. "So they're cleaning house." Jack's eyes were sharp. "No. They're covering tracks. And we're next." Lauren stared at him. "So what do we do?" Jack stood, rolled up the map, and grabbed his coat. "The truth doesn't end when you tell it. It ends when they can't erase it anymore." He looked at them. "We're leaving." Lucas blinked. Now Jack opened the closet and pulled out a duffel bag already packed with supplies. "We'll use the Northern Ridge Trail. I scouted it 2 nights ago. There's a ranger station 10 miles out at Old Equipment, but we can tap into a municipal relay. If we push, we make it by dawn." Lauren was already moving. She grabbed her jacket and helped Lucas out of his daze. "You really packed and didn't say anything." Jack tossed her a grin. "Wasn't sure how much time we had. Turns out not enough." Outside, the air was bitter and dry. The moon hung low, casting a pale glow across the snow-dusted ground. Maverick bounded ahead, silent as ever, but alert. He always knew when things were about to break. They moved fast, keeping low, and off-trail feet crunching lightly on frozen moss. The forest wrapped around them, quiet in a way that felt less peaceful and more like breath held tight. For the first hour, it felt almost calm. Then halfway through a narrow pass flanked by stone and pine, Jack stopped cold. A red flare had gone up far off behind them. Lucas looked back. That from the cabin, Jack didn't answer. He scanned the tree line. Then he saw at faint glints of movement. 6 figures fanning out through the trees. No flashlights. Night vision. Formation tactics. Lauren cursed. They didn't come to talk. Jack's voice was ice. "They're not sending suits anymore. Just silencers." He pivoted. "New plan. We split." What Lucas said, 2 trails, 1 high, 1 low. They can't cover both. I'll draw them. You take the drive. Lauren opened her mouth, but Jack cut her off. "We don't argue. We move. Go." He shoved the data pouch into Lauren's hands and sprinted toward the ridge without waiting. Maverick turned, barked once in protest, then followed. The others watched him disappear into the dark. Lucas breathed hard. He's not coming back, is he? Lauren didn't answer. They turned and ran. Jack moved fast, pushing uphill through roots and loose rock. Gunfire snapped behind him, sharp bursts too clean for warning shots. They weren't here to capture. He ducked behind a fallen log and returned fire, forcing two of the pursuers into cover. Maverick flanked right, a blur of muscle and instinct, drawing one of the men into the underbrush with a snarl. Jack moved again. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to buy time. They chased him through the slope, the trees growing thinner, the ground harder. His legs burned. His shoulder throbbed from the crash. But he kept moving. For Lauren. For Ben. For every name buried in that drive. By the time he reached the upper bluff, he was down to his last magazine. He dropped behind a boulder and waited. A figure crept through the trees below. Jack raised the pistol, then hesitated. Not one of them. The figure stepped closer, and he saw her. Not Lauren, the woman from the airstrip. Slate gray suit, hair tied tight. No gear, no guards. Just her. Jack stood slowly, keeping the gun up. You're brave coming out here without backup. She tilted her head. You're not the only one who doesn't trust their own team. Jack narrowed his eyes. So what is this, a truce, a warning? He said nothing. She stepped closer. They're not going to stop. You know that. Even with the upload. Even with the media. They don't care. If they can't control the truth, they'll burn it. Jack's jaw clenched. Then I burned first. She reached into her coat and tossed him something. A phone. Not active, but encrypted. A line to someone who can make this global. Beyond internal. Beyond this country. Jack caught it. Why are you helping me? Her voice dropped. Because I used to believe we were protecting something. But we're just hiding it. And I won't be complicit anymore. From below, voices echoed. The cleaners were close. She backed away. You've got one chance, one transmission. You'll know when. Then she disappeared into the trees. Jack stared at the phone, then at the ridge below. He heard them closing in, and then he ran. North, toward the relay, toward whatever came next. Because some truths aren't meant to survive quietly. Some are meant to explode. Snow whipped sideways as Jack sprinted through the thinning trees, the wind slicing his face, lungs burning with every ragged breath. His boots pounded frozen earth, and Maverick kept pace beside him, breath forming sharp clouds in the dark. Ahead, just beyond a break in the pines, a thin red light blinked on and off, a dying signal tower, barely functional, but enough. It had to be. Behind him, voices shouted through the woods. The sweep team was closing in. He could hear the radio chatter, sharp and coded, a hunter's tone. They wouldn't shoot to wound. Not this time. He didn't look back. The relay station came into view, an old Ranger outpost half-rotted at the base satellite dish, rusted, its signal line limp but connected. Jack burst through the service door, slammed it shut behind him, and wedged a splintered bench beneath the handle. Inside, dust blanketed everything. The generator stuttered. One ancient laptop blinked faintly on a metal table, its fan whining like a dying animal. Jack plugged in the phone the woman had given him. It powered on with a quiet buzz screen flickering, searching for uplink. Maverick sat by the door, growling low. "Hurry," Jack whispered. The signal caught. A secure window opened. No passwords, no menus, just a blinking cursor. He copied the entire data packet from the drive to the phone and hit enter. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a bar began to load, transmitting 60%, 70. Jack held his breath. Every second stretched. A loud crack broke the silence. The bench at the door splintered. A boot slammed into the wood. The lock twisted. 85%. Jack grabbed the pistol from his belt. Last magazine. Maybe 4 shots. He raised it, breathing steady. Maverick stood, ears pinned back. 95%. Another kick. The door burst open. A masked figure stepped in, rifle raised. Jack fired once. The shot hit high shoulder, maybe. The man staggered. Maverick lunged. Another figure appeared in the doorway. Jack fired again. Upload complete. The screen blinked. Backup servers confirmed. Jack exhaled. He turned and yanked the cord from the phone, pocketing it, just as another shot rang out, shattering the window. He dove sideways, crashing into the floor. Maverick yelped. Jack screamed, "No!" He crawled to the dog's side, blood streaked the floor. Maverick's side rose and fell shallowly, eyes fluttering. "No, no, no, stay with me. You did good. You saved them." Footsteps echoed outside. The men weren't chasing anymore. They were surrounding. Jack looked at Maverick, and then calmly he stood. Gun lowered. Hands up. The door opened. 6 men entered, rifles drawn, their faces unreadable. Jack didn't flinch. "Go ahead," he said, voice raw. "It's too late." They hesitated. He smiled through blood and exhaustion. "You can kill me, but the world already knows." A long silence. Then the lead man raised his radio. Package failed. Confirming exfil. No shots. No anger. Just retreat. The men backed away. One by one. The last turned at the door. "You'll be hunted." Jack looked at him. "I've been hunted my whole life." This time I bit back. Then they were gone. Jack dropped to his knees beside Maverick. The dog stirred, one paw twitching. Jack pressed his hand gently over the wound. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Just a little longer." He stayed like that until sunrise. The light came through broken glass, pale and gold, a small warmth after a long, brutal night. Outside, sirens began to echo in the distance, not cleaners, not silencers. Rescue. Real ones. By the time they arrived, Jack didn't speak. He handed over the phone Maverick held tightly in his arms. Lauren and Lucas arrived hours later, mud-caked, shaking, but alive. They found Jack in the medical tent, bandaged but awake, hand resting on Maverick's side. "He's going to make it," he said quietly. They patched him up. Lauren smiled, eyes glassy. "So did you." They embraced. No words. They didn't need any. 2 weeks later, headlines broke globally. Black site files leaked to public. Government corruption spanning 2 decades exposed. Truth brings accountability. Names fell. Careers ended. Investigations opened. Some arrests were made. Most weren't. But the world saw. The story spread like fire. And for once, the narrative didn't change. Because Jack, Lauren, Lucas, and Ben had left no room for silence. Ben survived the surgery. He gave his first interview from a hospital bed in Maine. His testimony, raw and unfiltered, became a rallying cry for whistleblowers across the country. Lucas disappeared off the grid, quietly helping coordinate data networks to protect future releases. He kept to the shadows, but Jack received a postcard every month. Always unsigned. Always from somewhere remote. Lauren went public. A voice for the truth. She didn't hide. She faced the cameras, told the story, made them listen. And Jack. He stayed in the north. He rebuilt the ranger outpost, kept the generator running, taught search and rescue to local volunteers. And Maverick he healed. Slower, older now, but still the same loyal eyes, always watching, always by Jack's side. People came sometimes. Journalists, activists, survivors. They all asked the same question, why did you do it? Jack never gave them the full story. He just said this because some things are bigger than survival. And truth, real truth, isn't a weapon. It's a responsibility. They usually left changed. Years passed. The names changed. The scandals rotated. But that story, their story, lived on. Not because it was louder, but because it couldn't be erased. Because in a world built to silence the brave, someone had finally shouted loud enough to crack the ceiling. And somewhere deep in the woods of Maine, in a cabin where the snow still fell in thick, soft layers, a man and his dog walked the ridge trail each morning, breathing air that once carried gunfire and now only carried peace. It was never about being remembered. It was about making sure no one else got forgotten.